Well, thank you to all of you for choosing to be in this session. And those of you who came here just because you were told it was interesting, I'll try my level best to make it interesting. For those of you who came here to have fun, I'll try and make it fun. For those of you who came here to learn about change within an organization, I'll try to include that as well. And that's the benefit of not having the first speaker turn up, because you get to know what's exactly running through people's mind before you start speaking. So how many of you speak Hindi in this room? Can you put your hand up? Okay, so a lot of you except for Nina. So
I only understand it.
you understand it? Well, that's great. So Hindi is a big part of my presentation today. I am obviously an Indian, but I don't live in India. I've been overseas for more than 20 years now. So, and I'm married to somebody who doesn't speak the language. So this is my only opportunity, and I've got to optimize it. So I'm going to be speaking in Hindi a little bit, and I'll translate for the people who don't understand Hindi. And I'm also a Bollywood bhakt. So I will bring in a little bit of Bollywood for you as well, one of the biggest platform of storytelling here in India. So let me just get started. So last week, my husband asked me, how's your storytelling talk preparation for Mumbai coming along? And he asked the question, didn't get a response from me, came closer to my face and looked at me and said, are you nervous? Are you scared? And I nodded my head like this, not like this, for what we Indians are known for overseas. And I said to him, डर क्यों लगेगा? घर जा रही हूँ, इंडिया जा रही हूँ, मेरी country है, मेरे लोग हैं, I'm not scared. What that means is, I'm going home, I'm going to my people, I'm going to India, why should I be scared? I said to him, जिम्मेदारी लग रही है. I said, I feel the responsibility, the same responsibility that I feel when I teach my daughter who's 12 years old, or the responsibility I feel when I teach my brother or sister or people that I care the most for. It's a different sense of responsibility you feel when you talk to people or you teach people that you really care for. And the only question I have running in my head right now is, how do I take the 30 minutes, thankfully now a little bit more, and look at my close to 10 years of career in strategic storytelling, draw out the perfect insights so that people who come to my session, my fellow Indians and more, are able to become strategic storyteller. So, where does an Indian go to seek direction? My mother would have loved for me to say Bhagavad Gita, but sadly, not for me. I went to Bollywood. And in this moment when I wasn't sure, how do I craft these 30 minutes for you to really make sense, I was reminded of this dialogue from the movie Hitchki, which I watched not that long ago, which said that एक आम टीचर पढ़ाता है, एक अच्छा टीचर समझाता है, बहुत अच्छा हो तो करके दिखाता है, पर कुछ ही टीचर होते हैं जो हमें इंस्पायर कर देते हैं जिंदगी भर के लिए. So for those of you who don't understand Hindi, this is just a very embellished dialogue of the quote from William Arthur Ward, which means a mediocre teacher tells, a good teacher explains, a superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires. So, you know, after having this sense of clarity, I set myself up 2 little goals for this session. These goals are not for you, they're for me. So the pressure is on me to deliver these goals. My goal number 1 today is to be able to tell you how to tell stories in the next 30 minutes. And goal number 2 is to be able to inspire you to be able to tell those stories. So with that clarity in my head, I want to welcome you to the session. The topic of the session, which the organizers, I think by mistake, forgot to put the name on the agenda for, is called Making Your Messages Stick with Storytelling. And I want to be able to get to those 2 goals for you in the time that I have. So shall we just get started? Well, as I promised to you, I'll make it a very Bollywood-style, Hindi-style presentation. Ek, do, teen, let's get started. So I want to talk about the 3 big khans of Bollywood. Actually, no, I will talk about the 3 corporate America Desi heroes, these 3 people. Now, I want to talk about them because The first picture, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, did something in the year 2014 and again in 2017 and many more times that proves that he is one of the most prolific storytellers in the corporate world. The second picture, Indra Nooyi, ex-CEO of PepsiCo, has repeatedly used storytelling to be able to become who she is and how well she's known in the corporate world. The third picture, Sundar Pichai, CEO of Alphabet and Google, did something in the year 2017 in DevOps, development operations, the new word in the world of agile, which demonstrate how good a storyteller he himself is. So I want to start with Satya. So let's look at what Satya did. So in the year 2014, Satya became the CEO of Microsoft. It's the first time that somebody who's an Indian had taken over as a CEO of an organization like Microsoft. So Satya had an option to introduce himself to the community of people from Microsoft and people externally by saying things like, my name is Satya, I've been with Microsoft for over 25 years, I worked in the cloud technology and all these kinds of different spaces, and I've been responsible for the development and the operations of product XYZ. But he chose to do none of that, and he did something very, very different. On the 14th of February 2014, it was Valentine's Day, and I clearly remember receiving a message from a friend of mine with a link which said, check this out on my WhatsApp. And when I looked at the link, I thought maybe she sent me some rose that opens up and stuff like that on Valentine's Day. But when I opened the link, it was Satya's letter to his employees on his very first day. And when you read the letter has 967 words in it. But the first 105 words of that letter were very strategically crafted to be able to create a connection that most people will not understand why and how to do. And that is where Satya was building a connection through who I am story. And I want to be able to zoom into those first 105 words for you. So let's look at these first 105 words. And let's break the science behind it. The spontaneity of these 105 words is just an illusion. There's a real method and a strategy behind how they've been crafted. So the words are, I'm 46, I've been married for 22 years, we have 3 kids. And like anyone else, a lot of what I do and how I think has my family and my overall life experiences. Many who know me say I'm also defined by my curiosity and thirst for learning. I buy more books than I can finish. I sign up for more online courses than I can complete. I fundamentally believe that if you're not learning new things, you stop doing great and useful things. So family, curiosity, and hunger for knowledge all define me. Those were the first 105 words of that letter. Media went crazy with this letter. And everybody thought, wow, what a gifted writer, what a gifted person with the words. But as I mentioned to you, the spontaneity of this who am I story is just an illusion. And I want to break the science behind this. So let's take the lines which are strategically written and designed to be able to create a connection with everybody who did not know much about Satya, and it was important for the growth of Microsoft and likability of himself as a leader. I'm 46 and I've been married for 22 years. We have 3 kids. What is Satya doing? What Satya is doing is building connection. Now, why is this line chosen to build connection? One of the principles of building connection is commonality. Commonality connects. So if you think of it, you are probably friends with people that you go to university with, or friends with people your children and their children go to school with. Why am I feeling the sense of responsibility? Because I'm an Indian, and I'm an Indian, I'm speaking to mostly Indians. So that's the commonality that connects. Now, Satya is writing these letters to thousands of people who work in Microsoft and to people outside of Microsoft as well. How is he going to find something common with everybody? So he goes and connects on the commonality of things that are common to all. Marriage, children, friendship, things like that are common to most people. If you don't have kids, you are somebody's kid, right? So that commonality is what he's using to be able to build connection. The second line, I buy more books than I can finish. I sign up for more online courses than I can complete. Satya is the CEO of Microsoft. We all know about his credibility. People don't need to know more credible things about him. What people need to know about him is something vulnerable, because if you become vulnerable, your likability factor goes up. And building likability does not come from your CV and from your credibility. Likability comes from vulnerability. So he very clearly admits that, you know what? I have the yearn for learning, I will buy more books than I can read, and I'll sign up for more online courses than I can finish. And suddenly, this picture-perfect Satya is a human. And people will say this phrase, oh, that's just like me. And that's where he connects with people through vulnerability and increases his likability factor. Moreover, when leaders actually get up and talk about a little thing that is not perfect about them, we quite like them for that. The third line, I fundamentally believe that if you're not learning new things, you stop doing great and useful things. This, for me, was the cleverest line of the introduction. I fundamentally believe that if you're not learning new things, his own personal value is all about learning. That's what he personally stands for. Because if he didn't stand for learning, he wouldn't buy more books, he wouldn't sign up for online courses. But your own personal value means nothing unless you attach it to the organization that you work for. The organization that he works for is Microsoft. They have to constantly innovate. And to be able to innovate, they have to be able to learn. So he very quickly goes and aligns his personal value to the organizational value by saying, if I don't learn, I can't do useful and great things. Because Microsoft's mission is to make every individual and organization be more productive. How are they going to do that? They're going to do that by being innovative. And how are they going to become innovative? Time and time and time again, by learning more. So the science of this writing is very clear for people who can actually decode the who am I story. Some people turn around and say, how can one story tell something about a person? Well, stories are like a DNA strand. They can actually tell an entire fabric of your character. And I think if you pay attention to how people craft and how people build their stories, you can really get to know what character this person has. And your character trumps your credentials. It's not the other way. So, the first point I'm going to leave you with today is everybody should have a who I am story that is relevant to your organization and the role you play in that organization. I was born here. I grew up there. My mama did this and my dada did this and I went to uni and I hated my teacher is a story that only one person loves. That's your mama. Nobody else likes that story. So if you want to build a who am I story, you're going to have to be very careful in thinking about how can I attach that story to where the organization is headed and how can I make it relevant in a strategic corporate world. So please stop reciting your CVs and build a who am I story. Now the zamana is of hashtags, so I thought I'll give you my key learnings in hashtags. For those of you who don't understand Hindi, what I mean when I say zamana is of hashtags, this is the era of hashtags, right? So hashtag number 1 for today is story versus a CV. Please build a who am I story. Don't recite your CVs. It gets you nowhere. Let's look at example number 2. Again, 2017. Satya decided to make this point very clear to his people. Empathy makes you a better innovator. If any one of you has ever looked at the design principles, design thinking principles, the very first principle is empathy. It takes empathy to understand that a smartphone doesn't work for a blind, and it takes empathy to understand why you need to have a sign language when a national anthem is being sung. So, he made it very clear that people need to have empathy if we want to innovate. But that point to people was like, yeah, that's common sense. Why do we need to hear that from him? Well, it is not common sense. To be able to make people understand that, he goes around facilitating and further telling a lot of stories in which there is a clear understanding established that without stories, your points are just abstract statements. So one of the stories he tells about empathy is this. He says, when I was being hired to join Microsoft, which was about 25 years ago, the person who interviewed me did not ask me about coding, programming, etc., or anything of that nature. He asked me, Satya, I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and I want to see how you respond to it. My question to you is, you're driving on the road, and you look towards the right, and there's a dustbin. And next to the dustbin is a baby that is lying there and crying. What are you going to do? Satya said, I will call 911. And he said, okay. He came closer to him, put his arms around him, and he says, no, dear Satya, you will pick up the baby first, and then you will call 911. That is what empathy looks like. And said in that moment, it was very clear to me, empathy is not as straightforward as we think. He goes and writes a book in the year 2017 called Hit Refresh, and in that book, he writes about the word empathy 53 times because you possibly can't innovate for the world that you want to serve and make more productive without having a very clear understanding of empathy. And time again, he tells stories to be able to make people understand what empathy stands for. So my hashtag number 2 for you today is, don't just make a point. Tell a story to make that point. Otherwise, your point is an abstract statement that nobody gets. I attended a lot of sessions here yesterday, and people said some very important things like people analytics is the future of human resources, understanding how to work with millennials is the future of workforce. Millennials prefer performance, prefer purpose over paycheck. But what do those abstract statements mean? Will never be understood unless you put a story around those things. I want to talk to you about the third story, or I want to introduce you to Indira's work now. In the year 2011, Indira came up with a vision for the company that she worked for, PepsiCo, which was performance with purpose. Now, a lot of the organizations have vision. The trend now is moving towards from vision to purpose. A lot of the companies say, okay, we don't need to have vision, we need to have a purpose now, because you have a much younger workforce, and the younger workforce believes in purpose. In India, I think the average working population is below 35 years old, so they all look for purpose. So she came up with this vision called performance with purpose. But what does that line mean? The Fortune magazine asked her in an interview, and I want to show you the way she responded. Hopefully the video would play perfectly. If it doesn't, give me a minute. I'll take the team's help and fix it, okay?
Now it's maybe 15 or more. And I grew up in a city where there was no water. Every morning my mom would get up at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, and she'd wait for the taps to start releasing water because the corporation would release water from the central reservoir and water would trickle in. And my mom would find every pot and pan to fill water in, and she'd give the kids and my dad 3 containers of water, which was your quota for the day. And you learn how to wash yourself, to clean yourself, your uniform had to be washed in it, everything with those 3 containers of water. At the same time, in the same town, the same city we lived in, I watched large corporations build plants, use a lot of water, okay? Because we like them, they created jobs. Think about this. You can't have a large corporation using excess water in a town where there is no water to eat or drink or live. I think there's a fundamental problem with this. Okay,
okay. So did you see, to be able to explain to people what performance with purpose means, she attaches a story to it. Because now you understand what that means. Otherwise, it would be like the Fortune magazine editor. Did you just wake up one morning and come up with this? How did you decide that this was going to be the vision of the organization? Let's talk about Sundar Pichai. In 2017, Sundar Pichai spoke at the Developers Conference, which is a large community of the Googlers. They're developers who develop products. And he said something. He said in his speech something like this. He said, since stories are the best told with pictures, bullet points and heavy text slides are increasingly avoided at Google. Now, it was easy for him to kind of preach something like this, but what was really interesting to watch when a researcher took his entire presentation and decoded the way it was designed, a researcher articulated that in a normal average presentation, in one slide there are 40 words on an average. It took 12 slides of his to get to 40 words. They were just pictures, and picture after picture, he was telling stories to be able to make people understand why the future of Google is going to shift from mobile to artificial intelligence. So repeatedly, these three desi heroes of ours have proved in corporate America that without stories, even the most thought out strategic corporate message falls on deaf ears. You have to have the ability to be able to spot a story and be able to tell. So my hashtag number 4 for today is story with pictures. So we've done 4 hashtags for today. Story versus CV, story versus point, story versus pictures, story versus vision alone. Okay, so if you can't have these 3 stories facilitating these kinds of communication, then there is no point communicating to people. Now, at this stage, when I present these examples, a lot of people start to feel quite tense. They feel, okay, that's great that they're doing this, but you're not telling us how they're doing it. At that point, I want to again go back to my Bollywood and say, tension lene ka nahi hai, dene ka hai. I'll tell you how do they do it. Let's learn how do they do it, okay? As I mentioned, their spontaneity is just an illusion. Let's learn how to. So I will kind of position this ability to be able to know how to tell stories. It's like playing the game of Kancha. So Kancha is marbles. So when we are little in India and we play marbles, one of the aims of the game is to be able to collect a lot of marbles. So in this case, if you want to build a story, you have to be able to collect 7 Kanchas or 7 marbles, okay? So if you came here with the intention to just learn one thing today, it's on the next slide. So stay with me and learn, okay? This is how you put a story together. How do you put different things that actually then in the end sound so spontaneous to people, but you actually have a very specific way of building it. So stay with me for this one. I'll take you through one by one. Okay, the very first thing, you have to know what's your key message. Okay, so people from human resources here, or people who are aspiring to be human resources professionals here, what are the kind of key messages that you're listening to in this conference? What are you listening to over and over again? What are people talking? Anybody? Stories, oh, thank you. I feel very privileged. But what else? What else? Not just here, generally in the conference. Happiness is one of the big message, sorry. Yeah, okay, so if I say to you, be happy, be the connecting factor, it sounds like, fulfillment, right? All these things, I have a term for all of this. It's called the naggy mother syndrome. When the mama wakes up in the morning, brush your teeth, go to school, go to bed on time. All those things that you're saying are absolutely right. But they're falling on deaf ears, just like everything our mama says is also right. But it falls on deaf ears. Because you know what? Mommy is not telling us the story behind it. Just like you are not telling a story and you're just saying, being happy is really important. Yeah, right. I needed to come to World Human Resources Conference to listen to that. I already know being happy is important. But being happy is important when embellished and enhanced with the story makes a lot more sense. And this is how you do it. So say, for example, we say our key message is happiness at work is a prime factor to drive desired outcome. Okay? That's the point we want to make. Now, if you want to put a story around that point, then you're going to collect these sorts of things to be able to get that message across. Number one, every corporate story, every organizational story that is told with a purpose in mind, not for entertainment, starts off in one of the three ways. It either starts with a calendar marker. Calendar markers sound like this: in the year 2009, 27th of September 2006, January 2007, or a globe marker in Los Angeles, in Taipei, in India, in Singapore, or a time marker, just the other day, last week, 2 years ago, 27 years ago, whichever way it might be. Quintessentially, when we tell stories to little children, what are the two most common ways to start? And? Once upon a time and? Long time ago. Those are the time markers you will never use, okay, in a corporate setting. They are mythical. But I think a better question to ask is, why do you think I start like this? Why do I start by saying 5 years ago or just the other day in September 2019? Why do you think I start like that? Well done. Because what that means, when somebody says credibility, what that means is that as soon as you say to someone, in September 2019, the listener goes, oh, I'm in for something that really happened. People are more geared to listen to something that really happened versus, let me tell you a story. Can you ban the word story from your vocabulary in an organizational setting, please? People have very little patience for it, because the moment you say to someone, I want to tell you a story, people say, can I give you a slap because I have no time? Truly, the word story is well positioned in the marketing and comms space, but in a very modern, hectic corporate world, the word story comes with a lot of negative connotation. So I highly recommend, don't say, I'm going to tell you a story. Even worse, I'm going to tell you a true story. Because then people think, what do you do otherwise? Okay? Don't use those words. The next thing is, you want to be able to activate people's visualization. What is activating people's visualization? So if I say to you that I landed at Changi Airport, or I landed at Mumbai International Airport, or I came to the lobby of this hotel and there was nobody at the reception, in both of those occasions, when I talked about the airport and I talked about the lobby, did your visualization get activated and you saw those places? You always do. It activates your visualization. Why does that happen? Let me demonstrate that to you. So if I say to you, ice cream, what comes to your mind? The noise of that. Yeah, it comes. Ice cream? Noise comes to your mind? Ice cream. If I say ice cream. Ice cream. Not ice cream. I do scream for ice cream, but ice cream, what comes to your mind? Pleasure. Okay. Sweet. So the interesting thing is, when I say a word, an image pops up in your head. You don't think ICECREAM. You don't think like that, because we think in images, we don't think in words. So when a corporate leader stands up and says, our culture is that of innovation, we led by the practice of collaboration, and enhancing our operating practices at the heart of our DNA, or whatever that means, nobody's listening, because you're not activating my visualization. You have to be able to give me a place that I can see. Now, a story must have people. In oral stories, we stick to 2 people, not more than that, and people usually have a dialogue between them. Resonance is key to choosing the right story. Look at your audience and choose the characters who are somewhat like your audience. You will get resonance. Otherwise, there's no resonance. Story must have emotion. It's one thing to say the CEO saw the employee engagement survey results. It's another thing to say the CEO saw the employee engagement survey results and he was shocked. Because the moment I add the word shock, you're now thinking, why was he shocked? Did he expect better results? It's one thing to say I ran a project in China, the project failed. It's another thing to say I ran a project in China, project failed, and I'm devastated. Now you're going to think I must have worked really hard on the project, that's why I'm devastated. Story has series of connected events. This happened, that happened, that happened. Examples are not stories. We ran a campaign last year that was successful. It was called the Happiness Campaign. That's not a story. I'm sorry. That's an example. Stories has series of events. Stories have something that is unexpected, that you did not expect to happen. Something must break the series of events. Otherwise, it's a flat series of events. Case studies are the worst way of writing stories. This was the problem, this was the solution, this was the execution, this was the result. There's no story whatsoever. So when you put all these things together, there are about 7 elements that make a story. And every single time Satya tells a story, Indra tells a story, Sundar Pichai tells a story, they have these elements. You can take their entire communication and align it with it. This is how they tell stories. So basically, my next hashtag for you is to collect these 7 kanchas, okay? So a very simple method really is, I'm gonna shift a few things, is if you wanna make a point, try and use this structure. Talk about the point you wanna make, tell the story that conveys the point you wanna make, and then conclude with the point you want to make. And because we're in India and you tend to forget hamburger, think of your vada pav. Okay? Well, I think my time's coming to an end. Have I got 1 minute? Okay. Well, if I have 1 minute, then I'll tell you some of the mistakes you will make. Okay? Some of the mistakes you will make. Galti se mistake, okay? Listen to this. Length of the story. Please don't exceed more than 2 to 3 minutes to get your point across. That's the length. Keep your stories invisible. Never say, I'm going to tell you a story. Just tell one. Start with a time marker, calendar marker, or a globe marker. Reminding you again, know the word story. Do not do character consumption. What that means is, in your corporate story, your point is the hero. The character in the story is not the hero. So don't say, this person was a poor thing, this happened, that happened. I know that it releases oxytocin and we build all these kind of connections, but your point is your hero. When you leave the corporate boardroom after you've told the story, people shouldn't be feeling for the character. They should be thinking about the point you made. Your point is the hero. Do not overbuild your character in a corporate setting. It can lead you in a very, very bad stance. In India in particular, we are bitten by this syndrome called the Shah Rukh Khan syndrome. We are grown up in this era where, our mothers have told us stories about Arjuna breaking the Chakravyuh. We've seen Shah Rukh Khan jump from a building. We've seen Salman bash 10 to 8, thugs. So we are very confident with getting up and trying new things and telling stories. But I think what we need to really focus is on the content. We in India are very heavily reliant on the delivery because we are confident, but we need to build our credibility with our content. We have to be very structured and articulated in the way we build the story for the modern hectic corporate world. In the modern hectic corporate world, there is no room for excessive delivery, right? For delivery that is too full on. So just let's notice the difference. That's how Shah Rukh Khan delivers, but that's how Satya delivers. There's no movement in how he delivers, but there's so much movement in how the heroes deliver, because heroes rely on delivery. Corporate leaders rely on content. No room for heroism whatsoever. Last hashtag, content is the king of the story. So I hope you can remember the 7 hashtags. I have no more time, but I hope आप convince हो गए और मुझे और बोलने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. Thank you very much.